I'm bringing in our all-star panel, Rob Bluey, the president and executive editor over there at the Daily Signal, our former colleague at the Newsmax, Jenn Pellegrino, who is now senior director of media affairs and the chief spokesperson at the America First Policy Institute, and back, as always, Caitlin Sinclair, our New York relative correspondent. I don't know. I'm trying to do something. I screwed it up. But Caitlin Sinclair, live from New York, our political commentator and spokeswoman for our good friends at the American Values PAC. Caitlin, I got a chance to hang out with Candace and Tony, all the folks there at America Values PAC last week doing the Maha thing. And man, I said to them, I've never seen a nominee get this much hype as Bobby did. I mean, I was at a Wednesday night dinner, and you remember, I think it was Wednesday, right? And the vote got pushed. Right. So then I said, what are we doing tomorrow night? And they were like, oh, we're all going out tomorrow night too. I got 2 free dinners out of it. But such a great group, a great cause. And I said to Candace and to Tony separately, like, so where does it go? And Candace, who is the CEO, and Tony both said, like, trust me, we're going forward with America Values and keeping the Maha movement and agenda alive. I was so fired up to hear that.
And Americans are too, Sean. Let me tell you, as someone who's existed in this sort of MAGA world for many years, this Maha movement is people from all different walks of life. And it's former liberals, Democrats, independents, conservatives, and you name it. And of course, we have the mama bears. When you upset the mama bears, you start a revolution, and we are finally seeing the results of that. I am thrilled.
I'm not kidding, Caitlin. More people than ever, as I was introducing myself to people and they were saying hi to me, they were like, yeah, I'm a Democrat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. All right, Jenn Pellegrino. President Trump made it clear. The big winner this week, one big bill. He came out and said, hey, let's do this. One big bill is going to be the winner, though. I have been on both sides of the fence. I was on the Senate guys are unified, and they're going to put 2 bills up because they're going to sell the president on, hey, sir, don't you want some wins? We can get border, energy, defense done. And then I talked to a bunch of the Freedom Caucus guys, and they said, here's the thing. We can do a lot more in government savings through one big bill and this tax thing. And I was like, ooh, as a conservative, I want one big bill. I want more of less government. How's that? That's a backward statement. But Jen, what is this? I mean, this is sort of like everyone's been waiting for President Trump to say, what do you want? And he picked who he wants. And that's one bill.
Yeah, listen, we all want more of less government. And I think obviously we're seeing a lot of criticism around that. I mean, Democrats, the left, all kinds of groups are going after this administration for working with DOGE and all their great work in uncovering all the waste that we're seeing going on in Washington right now. And the American people wanted this. They heard it from the campaign trail. We're seeing it in action now. And Sean, we've just reached the tip of the iceberg here in terms of all the waste in government, whether it's employees that don't need to be in their positions because it's we have too many on staff, or it's the wasteful spending that we're seeing, FEMA funds going to fund a hotel owned by Pakistan where illegal migrants are living in New York City. There's so much work to be done. But again, at the end of the day, you have to remember this is what the people wanted. And the reason that the left is so concerned right now is because they know they're next, and so many of them are about to be exposed.
Rob Bluey, I think that what excites me about, I'm conflicted. Do we talk more about the reconciliation package or the DOGE package? Let's stick on reconciliation for just a second. This, to me, conservative-wise, could potentially be one of the most consequential pieces of legislation for the conservative movement in quite some time. You're talking immigration, energy, defense, and when I say immigration, border security, obviously at the tip of that spear, and then massive renewal of tax cuts and other things. I mean, the president's talked about no tax on tips. Like, from a conservative standpoint, give me a sense of how big you think this is historically.
Sean, you're absolutely correct. And if you look at historically what the left has been able to do with budget reconciliation, going all the way back to Obamacare and obviously a lot of the packages that Joe Biden was able to get through without this threat of a Senate filibuster, it's the one shot to basically take what Donald Trump has started doing in the first 30 days in office and make sure that those are actually enshrined in legislation. And so all of the issues that you talked about will certainly be part of it. I'm glad that Trump has provided the clarity. I think it gives the budget chairman, Jody Arrington, it gives Speaker Mike Johnson certainty that the president will have their back when they go to get those votes. Remember, there is a tighter margin in the House right now than there is in the Senate. Speaker Johnson has no easy task to get this across the finish line. And obviously he'll have reinforcements coming to refill the ranks. But, this process needs to start immediately. You and I remember from the debate from 2017 how tax cuts dragged out for the entire year. I think we waited too long. If these are going to have an impact immediately and bring down the cost of living for Americans, they need to get the act done now.
Caitlin, Rob said something that I thought was so interesting. And I had a Newsweek piece on this, but it's one thing to do all this stuff through executive order, and I'm super psyched that he's doing it. It's another thing to do a lot of this stuff through DOGE. Super psyched. We'll talk about that in a minute. But when Rob said the law, right, that's what matters. If we want to make sure that a future president doesn't undo this, and I keep going back to immigration, which is we have always talked on the right. The immigration system is broken. Here's what we need to do. We need to hire more people, all these things. But if we don't codify it in law, God forbid we lose the White House or something changes, and suddenly it can all get undone. But if we can take a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican White House and lock in something like immigration reform and make it stronger and safer for our country, it makes it a lot harder for the Dems to undo it.
Absolutely. And I know we're already talking about midterms, which are basically around the corner now, even though we haven't even hit 100 days. But absolutely. And I think everything that we're seeing from immigration to the economy to DOGE this was all, Sean, a mandate from the American people. And I find it so incredibly ironic that the same people that were okay chopping off their sons' genitals are now the ones that will tell us that Elon Musk is going too far. So the case was extremely weak to begin with, in my opinion, basically telling the American people and the president who campaigned on the exact ideas of taking down government waste, having accountability, cutting that waste and spending. And now you're telling the American people, oh, we actually don't want the accountability. We don't want the president to get rid of waste. So the case was completely weak to begin with. All of this was a mandate from the American people on November 5th, and we hope to see some laws in place as well.
Jenn Pellegrino, to Caitlin's point, this court ruling, it was Tanya Chutkan, right? That name might sound familiar to a lot of people. She was the judge going after President Trump for a while. She rules in the favor of DOGE. And the thing that was weird, and I guess over the last 7 years, I've really lost faith in a lot of the judicial system. But the one thing about this was, I was like, so let me get this straight. These Democrats are suing the president of the United States and saying, you as the elected head of the executive branch can't look at the books of the executive branch. I mean, that's fundamentally what happened here. They were saying you can't just go in and look at these programs. And it's like, wait a second. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, imagine hiring somebody to be the editor of the Daily Signal and saying to Rob Bluey, yeah, but you can't look at the stories. It's like, what?
It's unbelievable, Sean. But isn't that the way Washington has operated for so long now? And so many of these groups, they were planning this, while Trump was on the campaign trail, knowing if he was back in office, that all the actions he was going to take. So they were planning lawsuits. They were planning to go after him to try to stop all the work that the American people voted for. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, again, there's so much out there that's waste. You would think anybody would be on board with cutting a lot of the waste, taking our hard-earned tax dollars and making sure they're going to the right places to help the American people, and not for some ridiculous funds that don't give us any return on our investment. I mean, it's just unbelievable that we're having this conversation. I would think every American would be on board with what's happening within DOGE right now.
And picking up on Jen's point, let's face it, we have a $36 trillion debt. We have a budget deficit that Elon Musk is, he just this week has said, he wants to cut only half of that. He wants to bring it down from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. I mean, I want him to go the full way. I think that there's so much waste across the government that we need to take a wholesale look at what the government is spending money on. And Sean, to your point, I appreciate you using me as the analogy, but what corporate CEO would take the reins of a business and not be able to go in and actually have an impact in terms of how that company is spending its money? This is just common sense. And I think Trump, as the businessman, is probably just confounded that the Democrats want to protect the bureaucracy the way they do.
And the Democrats' heads are spinning too. You know, it's funny. Sorry to interrupt you, Sean, but I'll just say I was having a conversation with somebody locally today that, you know, isn't aware of how things work in government like we might be aware, and in saying, you know, President Trump is moving so quickly. And I said, well, yeah, the midterms are right around the corner, and the party in power oftentimes loses some of that power in the midterms. And so there's so much going on right now, obviously at President Trump's pace, which is faster than lightning, faster even than the Trump administration 1.0, that Democrats, their heads are spinning. They can't keep up with it. And obviously they're scrambling to have some kind of messaging through this right now. But right now their hands are tied behind their back, and the best they can do is come after him with obviously attacks and going to federal judges like Tanya Chutkan.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like the mainstream media, Jen, and these liberals don't even know what to cry about first. Like Caitlin Collins is waking up every day like, wait, what am I supposed to be mad at today?
Well, Caitlin, to Jen's point, this is the problem. You think to yourself, this doesn't make sense that a CEO, which is what the president is of the executive branch, can't look at the books. And then Jen put her finger right on it, which is they're scared that they're going to see these guys have a vested interest in hiding this waste because somebody's getting something somewhere, right? So they're like, please don't look here, look over there. And then they have to go to court because they're like, you're going to see all the bad stuff that we've been doing for decades, especially in the real woke world.
Right. And I think the funniest part about this is, could they make it any more obvious? Like you're saying, no, don't show the receipts. Don't actually show the corruption. Don't show the waste. That says a lot for the American people. And, you know, look, President Trump is saying he wants to run this administration like a business. He's a businessman. We heard from our press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, saying they're going line by line. They have the receipts, and the American people deserve these answers. You
know, Rob, the thing that's so funny to me is that central to the Democrats' scare tactic is these DOGE employees are looking at these things. And I'm like, right, they're federal employees. Who do you think's looking at things? Federal employees? Do you not think that people in the Treasury are, I've had a security clearance for 26 years. I've been in the, that's what employees do. They're trying to not let you think about this. Of course they're looking at things. That's what they do. If you don't think people are looking at things, how do you think that they operate? But the Democrats are trying to scare you to make it seem like these are bad people that are going in to look at things. Why? Of course, federal employees, of which they are looking at the books, are looking at the programs. Frankly, they're probably not looking enough. And a lot of them aren't doing their job is what seems to be the issue here.
The people who've had these jobs for years, if not decades, clearly haven't been doing enough work because they would have identified this waste, fraud, and abuse. The things that Elon Musk and the DOGE team are finding out, that there wasn't a particular tracking code, on certain payments that were going out, you would think that those are just basic steps that somebody who was a federal employee would be able to identify before you had a group of outsiders come in. But I think I don't have any issue particularly with people who Musk has brought in to review this information. I think it's long overdue. And what I hope, going back to our conversation about Congress, is that they can enact some of these reforms in law, because one of the things that I do worry about is that this will be a short-term phase. Remember, DOGE is supposed to expire on January 4th, 2026. They have a lot of work to get done in the short window that's basically the next year. And so Congress needs to follow through and make sure that we have the scrutiny on these books, whether it be the Treasury Department or other agencies, that this does not continue in future administrations as well.
100%. The thing that was so funny to me, Jenn Pellegrino, is I know I love to bring it up, but I can't help myself, is that there's a lot of press recently about my case, Spicer v. Biden, and the ability that gave President Trump the authority to go fire all these people. And people got mad at me, at least in the comments section of the Washington Post when the big story came out, like somehow it's my fault that Biden fired me and he was that petty, and I'm the bad guy because of this. In the case of this DOGE thing that Judge Chutkan ruled on, one of the things that the Trump administration and the Trump White House pointed out to the court is that longtime Biden confidant Anita Dunn was a special government employee. What does that mean? It's somebody who doesn't have the same disclosure, comes in and out of government, doesn't have to give up their government jobs. So Anita Dunn helps run a huge PR agency in Washington, D.C. that has massive clients who have business in front of the federal government. And she kept playing this little shell game as a special government employee to stay in the Biden White House. Now that Elon's using the same tactic, apparently it's very bad. But no one in the media, no one on the left thought that what Anita Dunn was wrong. Now, granted, Elon Musk is no Anita Dunn, right? She runs a few $1 million public affairs company that have contracts in front of the government. He's obviously a he's the richest man and the most successful guy. But they didn't have a problem when it was Anita Dunn. And then when Trump uses the same playbook, oh my God, that's horrible.
I mean, listen, age-old story here in Washington, right? The rules for thee and not for me. But listen, you just drive around the D.C., Northern Virginia area, anywhere in the suburbs, Sean, you look at some of the homes around here and you ask yourself, what do these people do for a living? And you know what? A lot of them are government contractors and they're making a lot of money. And these people have been living this way for years and years. Nobody's checked into how this money is being spent. And finally, now it's being uncovered. And a lot of them, again, like I said, are really nervous right now. And of course, they're going to point the finger at President Trump to distract from what they've had going on and what's going to be uncovered. But the American people are not being fooled right now. And they're thrilled to see this happening. And I hope, to Rob's point, that it does continue, that we can get through this in the next 2 years, because they've got a lot of work to do, but it's something that for years has needed to be taken care of.
Can you imagine if you're some government contractor that had a ton of DEI contracts and you bought this big house in McLean, you're like, uh-oh, I got a payment coming up. Caitlin, everybody, and I'll start with you, Caitlin. I was very intrigued by the Trump-Musk interview on Hannity this week, because the Dems are trying desperately, and probably more so the leftists in the media, to tear Trump and Elon apart. And yet, I thought that they got what they wanted out of the interview. They showed people they were aligned. Musk was very complimentary of the president. The president was complimentary of him. And I think that it hopefully put to rest this sense that, there's a schism between the two, where they're growing mad at each other.
Well, I don't think the mainstream media will ever rest. However, for those of us that were paying attention and watched the interview with an open mind, yes, the president restated that he is in charge. He is in fact the commander-in-chief. And he instructs Elon Musk on what to do as far as how he's handling DOGE and how he's managing that, which I think we alluded to earlier. By the way, DOGE is expected to expire in less than a year. So
just real quick, do you guys think it'll get reauthorized? Or whatever. I can't imagine you do all this in a year and walk away.
I sure hope so, Sean. Again, there's so much
the laws. That's what I want.
Yeah, there's so much to be done. I don't know how they're going to get through it in a year.
Okay, good.
And Sean, you have the House and Senate committees. Joni Ernst in the Senate and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the House.
Look, I'm sorry, I get it. They're suddenly cool. It's suddenly cool to want less government, but none of these folks did anything. And I'm sorry, both sides. Joni Ernst maybe a little. Elon was talking about that. But for all these guys, every time I've had them on my show the last several years, everybody loves to talk about it. No one wants to do anything. And it wasn't until Trump and Elon came along that it actually became cool to cut government. And so if they're not keeping Congress's feet to the fire, it's not going to happen.
Sean, the last time that I remember having a vigorous debate about this goes all the way back to the earmark debate. John Boehner, of course, being against earmark. The late Tom Coburn. He actually teamed up with Barack Obama in the 2000s to pass legislation to give more transparency into government spending. But you're absolutely correct. There have been movements in the past, like the Tea Party, which, obviously created great awareness about government spending. But when it came to actually delivering on the results, nobody has been able to match what Elon Musk has done over the last month.
Right. The thing that I found so funny, Jen, is the patheticness, the sadness of the Dem response. They're doing dances. They stand outside government buildings and yell, but it's horrible. It's actually sad. It's like, imagine the Philadelphia Eagles, and as much as because they're the Super Bowl champ, if they walked on the field and they saw a Pop Warner football team, at some point they'd be like, this isn't fair. And I feel like the Dem response right now to me is just, is this all you songs? Come on.
It's so true. And I can't remember who said this, but somebody recently, and it might have been in Playbook, a Democrat strategist, but said, the Democrats, they have no message and they have no messenger right now. And we saw that going into the 2024 election. We saw how out of touch they've been with the American people, and the legacy media continued to fuel that fire and obviously enable that. But now they're realizing, they wanted to make the American people think that, nope, we have this, we're going to go so far to the left, but they weren't having it. They went too far, and the American people weren't ready for that. That's not largely America's values. And so they have a lot to do in terms of figuring things out. The clock is ticking for them. Who knows how things will go in the midterms? Obviously, a lot can change, as we've seen over the last year. But they really need to get their act together if they hope to win future elections.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.